So it's a really subtle difference, but it's opened it up, right? Hey, it's Marcus from Holosuite, and today we're going to talk about working in parallel when we're mastering ambient music. This is a technique that I will use sometimes when I am looking to add a little bit of something extra and it's very complex material or there are a lot of things happening anyway in the mix that make it more difficult than just, say, raising the highs in the EQ. So when we're working in parallel, it means that we're not adding things directly to the track. We're going to be adding it to a separate instance of the track, and then we're going to be blending that version back into the original to give it just a very subtle effect. The reason why we might do this as opposed to doing something directly is that, particularly in mastering, when you make an adjustment to the track, it can very easily unbalance everything else. And it's very difficult to, for example, add highs into the track without things sounding too harsh or things getting in the way that might not want to be brought up. So if we laser focus in on the exact thing that we want to increase in the parallel track, we can just blend it in a little bit so that we can dial it in a little bit more closely than we could if we were just doing it with a broadband EQ. So here's one of my tracks. I have already set up my duplicate track, but let's listen to the original one. And so I want to add a little bit more to the highs here, but I don't want to overbalance it. So I have chosen to go the parallel route. So I have duplicated the track, and in the effects, I have removed all of the original effects and then added one compressor and one EQ. The reason why I'm adding the compressor is because it will squish the dynamic range and make it easier to bring out the kind of sparkly bits in the highs for this case. So let's go through it one by one. So I will run the music. This is down at 0 for the moment, so we're just going to be looking at it. So I've added about -10-ish decibels of compression, and when we're doing this technique, it doesn't have to be you don't have to have any particular parameters. You can just reduce the threshold until you get to about -10 dB. So what's really happening is I'm squishing the crap out of the music so that everything becomes, so all the dynamics get reduced basically down to 0. Now, once I've done that, I have added my EQ, and you can see that I've boosted the highs a ridiculous amount here. So we're at plus 15 dB here. And then I've also removed any of the lows so they don't get brought in as well. So it means I can laser focus in on just that top end. And what this means is if we listen to it by itself, is it's just the top end. So what we're now going to do is we're going to blend it back in with the original signal until it just starts to make a difference. Basically, we don't want to overdo it. We just want to add a little bit. All right, so let's listen back and forth to see what's happened here. So it's a really subtle difference, but it's opened it up, right? Makes it sound a lot better. So you could theoretically do this just by slapping an EQ on the original audio, but I think this enables us to be more subtle about how we do things. And of course, the most important thing in mastering is subtlety. And in ambient music, especially when there are a lot of things happening in the top end, I find that this is a good technique for getting a little bit more juice out of it. This is a technique that you can also use for mixing. So we can do the same thing in mixing. Let's jump over into a project and have a look at that pretty quickly. Okay, so this is another one of my old tracks, and I'm going to pick a track that and just add a little bit more top end to this one as well to see if I can get the same effect here. I'm going to pick this one because it's fairly subtle. Let's see if I can get a bit more. So same thing, I'm just going to duplicate the track. Going to turn it all the way down. Remove the plugins. And in this case, because it's not particularly dynamic, I'm just going to add an EQ directly on here. Let's see if I can get anything out of that. I might add a bit of saturation just to really drive it because it's pretty quiet still. All right, so let's listen to before and after here. So just a little bit more, and I probably could have done this with just EQ, but I just wanted to demonstrate that this is also useful for mixing as well in situations probably with more dynamic material, but this works just as well as doing EQ and maybe with a bit more fine control. So there are a couple of ways of doing this without having to duplicate the track. If you are a Reaper owner, all of the plugins in your chain have a wet dry knob. So here, just over in the corner, you can actually choose how much of the process signal goes in. So when I'm using Reaper, I don't have to actually duplicate the track. I will just add a new version of the plugin, and then I will just set the amount of process signal I want to come through. Also, you'll find that some plugins will actually have a wet dry knob. So for example, look out for something that has a mix in it. So we've got the Ozone Exciter here, has a mix slider. So I can go from 0% process signal, 100% dry, all the way up to 100% mix, 100% wet. So if you're going to be doing this, just bear in mind that any plugin that you add will add latency. So especially if you're duplicating the plugin, you have to watch out that you don't use too many extra plugins. That latency will end up causing phase cancellation if the timing of the tracks start to go out slightly, and you'll probably hear it pretty quickly. You'll hear that kind of sucking phasing sound. So just beware when you're doing this that you only use like 1 or 2 plugins. So I hope that you found this useful. Once again, if you have any questions, throw them in the comments. And don't forget to check out the links in the description. You've got links to my free resources. You've got a form where you can request a free 1-track master sample from me. Please don't forget to like and subscribe so I can keep making you these kinds of tutorials. And until next time, keep making music. Cheers.